Sambil minum ya? Belum minum ya Pak ya?
Recording in progress.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the fourth day or the last day of the 7th Geoinformation Science Symposium 2021. For today, we will have 4 main events. We will have a plenary session with 3 keynote speakers, and then we will have a workshop session also with 3 invited speakers. And then we will have a parallel session, and we also have a closing ceremony at the end of our event. Without further ado, for the first main session, we would like to invite Dr. Gadjah Mada to moderate the plenary session. Dr. Gadjah Mada, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Sari. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the 7th Geoinformation Science Symposium of the Faculty of Geography. And welcome back for those who have been attending this symposium from the beginning or from 2 days ago. This morning, I will be the host of the first session, the plenary session, and we will have 3 speakers. The first one is Professor Dr. Erna Adiningsih from LAPAN, and the second one is Dr. Geri Miller from the ESRI, and the third one is Dr. Muhammad Dimyati from Indonesian Geography Association. For the first speaker is Professor Erna Adiningsih. She will be speaking about satellite-based remote sensing and geoinformation applications in Indonesia, from science to industry. Good morning, Professor Erna.
Good morning, Dr.
How are you? I
Fine,
hope you are fine. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us in this plenary session, and we are very happy to have you this morning to share your knowledge and your experience with the audience here. Please allow me to read your bio data related to the one you are going to present. So Professor Dr. Erna Adiningsih is the acting head of the Aeronautics and Space Research Organization, or LAPAN, of the National Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN. This is a newly developed agency. Formerly, Professor Erna was assigned as the Director of Aerospace Analysis and Information Center of LAPAN in 2007 up to 2013. From 2013 to 2018, she served as a senior researcher until the early February 2018. She was then appointed as the Prime Secretary of the National Institute of Aeronautics and Space of the Republic of Indonesia from 2018 up to August 2021. Currently, in the 1st September 2021, she was inaugurated as the acting head of LAPAN, or BRIN up to now. Professor Erna achieved her Bachelor of Meteorology, Master of Natural Resources and Environmental Science, and PhD in Climatology from the Bogor Agricultural University, or IPB. She was awarded a research professor in remote sensing technology in 2016. Moreover, she has worked as a researcher in remote sensing technology and applications at LAPAN since 1989. So Professor Erna, you have 45 minutes to talk, and for the rest 50 minutes we have discussion. So now the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Proyo, as the moderator of this session. Good morning, very good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Invited speakers and the participant of the 7th Geoinformation Science Symposium, organized by University of Gadjah Mada. First of all, I would like to thank you very much, and appreciation is my honor to be invited to speak in this event. And this morning, I would like to talk about my experience as a researchers, as well as LAPAN experience in how to conduct the remote sensing applications, particularly in geoinformation services. Please allow me to share screen. Is it okay? Can be seen clearly my?
Yes, you can see it.
Yeah. Sorry, I can. Okay. Okay. Well, the topic of my talks this morning is satellite-based remote sensing and geoinformation applications in Indonesia, from science to industry. And I think this symposium for the day one up to maybe yesterday sessions has already talked about many things in terms of science and research or research and development activities by the universities, research institution, and so many agencies. And as mentioned by the moderator, that now I'm working for the Aeronautics and Space Research Organizations, which formerly it is institution, National Institute of Aeronautics and Space, but since beginning of this September this year, LAPAN has been integrated into BRIN, National Research and Innovation Agencies, together with other or several research institutions. So with this topic, I would like to share with you more about how the satellite technology and geoinformation activities, particularly conducted by LAPAN so far since many years ago, and how we also put attentions and also efforts to develop satellite-based remote sensing applications. And as LAPAN is now at the national level is the only remote sensing data provider for the government institutions as well as for the local government. And of course, for the universities and research institutions. And moreover, how we also try to develop satellite technology. And from that point, I think there are many opportunities in terms of how geoinformation can be moved from science toward services and industry as well. Beginning with the satellite technology and geoinformations, I think nowadays we realize, and I think it's in our daily activities, that satellite technology has become very essential in our not only for the geoinformations activities, but also for the communications, for the navigation, as the part of how we can produce the geoinformations services. From this satellite technology itself, I think it is important to emphasize that the trend in the future is how to combine the missions of the satellite, not only for the remote sensing or Earth observations missions, but also for the telecommunications and navigation as well. Indonesia, I think, is the third country in the world that had the first telecommunication satellite, but the mission is only for the telecommunications, and the orbit is in the stationary orbit. But since I think 10 years ago, I think the satellite technology development is now moving toward how the combined missions is become or equatorial orbit satellite, which is we can operate the satellite to provide information for the telecommunication services for the telecommunications. And of course, the remote sensing is the basis of the geoinformations productions. And moreover, we hope that the technology development also can be enhanced and strengthened to put the mission for the navigations. I think we already know that the geoinformation itself is also depend on very much on the navigation satellite. But until now, we depend very much on the foreign navigation satellite or international, the existing international navigation satellite, when Indonesia hasn't had its own navigation satellite. And from the perspective of satellite-based remote sensing application, particularly for the geoinformations processes and productions, LAPAN has experienced very long experience from, I think, from 1970s up to now, beginning from the very low resolution data, and then enhanced with the medium resolution data, and now we can have the high and as well as very high resolution satellite data. And the application is also varies from a natural resources inventory as well as for the environment and disaster monitoring and mitigations. And very currently, we also provide the services or the needs for the government to produce the strategic information. For example, cannabis identifications, country border, as well as for example, for the mining and so many other applications. This is an example how the land application. I will just share you our progress in the satellite-based remote sensing to produce the geoinformation. From the land application, I think we can also, with the existing satellite data from low spatial remote sensing, from low spatial resolutions, I mean, such as Terra Aqua Modis data, we can produce the daily observation. So this is the the strength of this data is on its on time repetitions and the frequency. How can we can conduct the monitoring from daily up to weekly or monthly as well, and also from the perspective of medium and high resolution data. For example, we have the spot imageries. We can also produce the monthly information or quarterly informations, such as for example, for oil palm plantations. And this kind of application has been supported by very long research activities from maybe from 1990s, yes, more than 20 years, I think, to enhance its accuracy, its informations, as well as to respond with the new with the changes of the satellite itself. For example, in 20 years ago, we have a NOAA data, and then Aquaterra data, and from medium resolution we have Landsat, and also now we have also the Sentinel data as well as the spot imageries data. So this is a kind of a very long and continuous research activities to be conducted. Of course, in this regard, LAPAN has the collaboration with many institutions, including the universities, and I think University of Gadjah Mada is part of our strategic partner in this regard. And another example, for example, we also have launched the LAPAN satellite. For example, in the left hand side is the example of LAPAN A3 satellite imagery for a certain area to monitor the natural resources. And if we combine based on the research, we can combine also with the existing Landsat imageries to produce the needs for natural resources monitoring. Because when we use our own satellite, we can have the plan, we can have the priority in certain areas. For example, if as an example in the application of disaster management, if any disaster occurred in Indonesia, then we can focus our own satellite to observe, to monitor that particular area. But if when we use the international satellite, we cannot do that kind of activities. This is the kind of how we can combine all the satellite imageries. This is another example of how the research activities for the marine applications. For example, for the chlorophyll monitoring from the low resolution satellite imagery from the Aqua Modis, and from the use of the Landsat imageries, which is a medium resolution in terms of its spatial resolution. I think another example is for the bathymetry. And I think the use of this kind of information is now mainly utilized by the government institutions, from the national level up to the local government institution. This is the situation probably in 10 years ago. It is another example for the coastal area applications, which is for the mangrove monitoring from the Landsat imagery, as well as how we can use also the Landsat data and Sentinel-1 data to monitor the oil spills, which is very useful to help the Ministry of any ministry is dealing with the the effort to reduce the sea pollutions in any particular areas in Indonesia. This is an example when oil spills occur in Balikpapan area in 2018. And from the other remote sensing applications, I think the research and science also have developed very much, and now we can also not only how to use the very low spatial resolution data such as Himawari, but its strength is on how we can utilize its very frequent observation, because the Himawari satellite imagery is we can acquire the data every minute. So it is very useful for any for example for the flood potential monitoring. And we can combine the application with the medium and high resolution imagery, such as the impact of the flood itself. So when we can detect the flood potentials in any particular areas, then we can use also the higher resolution data to focus in any particular area to at least to produce the geoinformation on the impact of any disaster, natural disaster. In this regard, as an example is the flood impact. And this is the application in the application. I think for the natural resources, the perspective from the user is free of I think the service is free. So this is a kind of how the challenge for the research to provide a very quick, very rapid response, and of course the accuracy. Another example of the remote sensing imagery application in disaster is for the land and forest fire monitoring, as well as for the drought potential. This is also from the Himawari, which is a very low resolution spatial data, but its time resolution is very, very high. And from the other example that is very recently developed in terms of the research and how we can also enhance the science in data mining is data mining. I mean not the mining activities, but how to process the data to get any particular information, geoinformation from the images. That this is I think this is a very, very new area of geoinformation based on the remote sensing satellite imagery. For example, the taxation object from Pleiades. Pleiades is a very high spatial resolution satellite imagery. From this example, for example, we can get the information for the for example, in any particular areas in 2012, and we can also get the information that 3 years later that the area has changed from the vegetation cover to the bare area. And we can also get the size or the area of the building, for example. This is a kind of information which is very useful for the Ministry of Finance to estimate the potential of taxations. This is very new, that in maybe 10 or even 10 years ago, we have no idea in this particular application of geoinformations derived from the satellite imagery, but now we can use and this is also the research and science itself is also driven by the needs of the users. From the perspective of LAPAN, of course, the main user is the government institution, from the national and local government as well. And I think for the mining activities, it's not widely new, because but with the various type of resolution of the data from very low, medium, high, up to very high resolution of the satellite imagery. I think there are many challenges how to utilize those types of the data to produce a new geoinformations, new type or new area or new any new information. This is geographic base. So this is still there are challenges in terms of science, but in terms of LAPAN experience, we have to move fast. I think I mean that the research activities has to be conducted very fast to fulfill the user's need. But I think in terms of our collaborations and partnership with other research institutions as well as the university, there are still quite a lot of area that we can explore the science, the research area, the research topic to produce more, more types of informations. And next is, with our current activities, not only in remote sensing data processing and application, but LAPAN also focus on how to develop a satellite itself. Satellite technology is important because without our capacity in satellite technology, I think we will depend very much on the provisions of foreign or international satellite. So this is kind of how we can also link the research activities in satellite technology, which is now I think the satellite technology, it's innovation based on our experience now has moved from the R&D activities toward the economic-driven activities. For example, LAPAN has launched and operated LAPAN A3 satellite, LAPAN A1, A2, and A3, and we hope that in next year we can launch the A4 satellite. And with this generation of satellites, I think the technology itself has been improved to fulfill the needs in terms of the data application itself. For example, for the geoinformations. And I think in a broader sense, Indonesia, not only LAPAN, but we can also extend the collaboration to enhance our capacity in research and innovations, not only in the satellite technology itself, but also in application, including for the geoinformations activities or research and science and research. And another challenge is how we can also improve the automations and artificial intelligence and many other tools, for example, machine learning and many other tools to improve the data mining for more accurate and fast geoinformation production, because this is important for the not only for the service to the government, but also for many other applications. This is our national satellite roadmap. Of course, in achieving the targets, we still have many constraints, but we try to solve the problems and try to at least the time target to launch the satellite can be done. For example, not only for the experimental satellites, but also we can LAPAN under BRIN now pay attention on how to move on the operational satellite for Indonesia, such as equatorial orbit or near equatorial orbit satellites. This is quite a big program on projects to be conducted. And as I mentioned before, that we have the target to launch another 8 satellite, which is A4 in, we hope that 2022 next year we can launch the satellite. Now is the progress is under the finishing stage of satellite development, and we hope also we can accelerate the satellite technology development, not only for the experimental, as I said before, but also for the operational needs for Indonesia. And of course, we can, with our own capacity, we can put the missions not only for example, for the Earth observation or the remote sensing or for the geoinformation, but also for the navigation, for the telecommunication as well. And as our task, particularly 8, and now under BRIN, is we also have to operate the what we call is National Earth Observation System. This is the mandate of the space law number 2013. It is also we also developed the what we call is SPBN, Sistem Pemantauan Bumi Nasional or National Earth Observation System, as well as the Provincial Earth Observation System. And what we need in this regard is how to improve the monitoring model. So this is a kind of open challenge and open opportunities for the research institution, including the universities, as well as the infrastructures and the maintenance of the system. And this is quite new because we experienced the COVID-19 pandemic. 8 also developed what we call is 8 Hub COVID-19. This is a kind of how do we integrate the geoinformation data with the remote sensing satellite imageries to at least to provide the informations for the capital city of Indonesia. This is a kind of the new area of applications. And another example is the challenge that we also have to be able to provide digital user services, not only for the web based, but also Android based or mobile based platform. And I think this is another a good example that the services is move toward not only the services for the government, for the community, but also how we can support and promote the industry. For example, the navigation for fishermen. This is we have the collaboration with Marlin. PT Marlin is a private it's a private industry in gadgets. So we have a very good collaboration to promote the industry from very small. Maybe we can also develop with the bigger scale of the industry. That the result of the research activities can be moved or delivered to be utilized by the industry to produce informations, of course, in commercial perspective, and this is can be conducted very well. So this is a kind of example that the trend now is not only how to be able to process the data to produce the geoinformation, how to improve the accuracy, but also how to improve to produce the products that can be delivered to the industry. So with the integration of 8 under the BRIN is now another challenge. And as a conclusion, I would like to emphasize that the space technology innovation and application has moved from the R&D activities toward economic driven activities. As I mentioned, one specific application is in taxation. Taxation is an economic perspective. But we can provide the geoinformation based on the satellite imagery to fulfill that kind of needs. And we also, I mean, not only Lapan, but Indonesia in a broader sense has proven to have the capacities, not only in the research and innovations from the upstream to downstream, but in particularly for geoinformation. And we also have to this kind of capacity or capability to be enhanced by how to promote the synergize the triple helix roles and collaboration, of course, between the government, R&D institutions, including the universities and business entities. This is our challenge, not only Lapan challenge, but our challenge together. And it is also important how to strengthen geoinformation science to promote fast and accurate digital services. I think this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you. And I return to Dr. Proyo.
Thank you very much, Professor Erna. It was very nice presentation. And for those who want to raise question, please type your question in the Zoom chat so that we can read and we can forward it to Professor Erna. Let me see if there is question. I think not yet, but I have a small question, Professor Erna. You have mentioned the Lapan satellite data, A1, A2, even up to A4, right?
A4 is still under the construction. We
okay. Yeah. How far Lapan have made this data available for the public, or did Lapan already make a kind of applications to support any government policy for that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Proyo. I think from the perspective of the application of the A series satellites, I think we started with the what we call it A because it's actually it's an experimental satellite. From the A1 is we call it an experimental satellite because it's the first satellite that we developed together with our partner in Germany, and we were successful in launching and operated the satellite. But from the A2 and A3, I think we also have another what we call experience that we can develop the satellite in Indonesia. So A2 is particularly for the ICE data. ICE is for the to monitor the ship movement is already operational, and we provide the data for the for example for Bakamla, the agency for marine guard or marine safety, marine monitoring and guard. But for the remote sensing sensor or remote sensing data from the A3, I think is because this is our partner was from the university also to define the sensor, and now from the A3 we also have a kind of portal to be able to access by the users. But since the orbit is in polar, so the time resolution is very it's not so good, but we at least more than 20 days. So this is already available, but maybe since the capacity of the sensor is still under need to be improved. So we in the position that we need to do the research to enhance the accuracy of the informations, because when we develop the sensor of the A3, for example, we try to make it similar with the Landsat satellite sensor. But of course, since it is a micro satellite, so the capacity of the sensor is not quite the same as the Landsat. We tried to at least some of the bandwidth is similar, or the bandwidth, the band is some of the band is similar, but since the capacity of the satellite is a micro, is around 100 kilograms. Compared with the Landsat satellite is big satellite, so we try to do the research to improve the data processing. So in this regard, it is open for research, but I don't think this is a kind of really ready for the operational, because the users is familiar with the Landsat. We need to we hope that in the next generation, or A4, we can improve it to be able to what we call it comparable with the Landsat, because if the government or the users would like to use the data, usually they are very familiar with the Landsat data, but not familiar with the A3, or perhaps in the future A4 data. We need more effort on that particular area, the data processing, and information accuracy. Still a lot of opportunities to in terms of science and research.
Okay, thank you very much. Now there are several questions. Please read me these questions. The first one comes from Miss Munawaro. I think she's from BIG, from the National Geospatial Information Agency. Dear Professor Erna, will LAPAN provide satellite image service or map service such as Esri imagery or Google Map imagery, which is integrated with GIS or mapping software? Thank you. This is the first question.
Can I ask this the first?
Yeah, directly, please.
Okay. Thank you for the questions, Ms. Munawaro. Now LAPAN very currently has been conducting to develop a system, what we call is a space map, which we hope that the system can kind of provide satellite imagery services with a public kind of public service, as we are already familiar with the Google Map imagery. We in the future, now it's still under development, that we develop a system to provide a kind of image services based on the of course in this regard, because it's if we look at the Google Map imagery, it is free of charge, and we cannot get the specific date of data acquisitions, but from what LAPAN will develop is we can provide the latest or the updated imageries. Of course, for the very high, the constraint is on the data license, because the data data itself we get from the international data provider, which is for the government license, and of course for the government license has some limitation, but for the medium data, for medium resolution data, I think it's free now, and we try to put all the this kind of data in the system. What we call is a space map. It's not for not only to maybe we need some effort how to in the future to promote the use of this kind of system by the public.
Okay,
but basically any users now can access our data as long as the data is free. Any users can acquire the data from our system, for our data center. But maybe for the very high resolution data, because it's limited to the government license, so maybe this is based on the request. Based on the request, the user needs to request the data to LAPAN. But for the other, I think it's can easily access.
Okay, thank you, Professor Erna. Now the second question comes from Mr. Ari Cahyono. He is from Universitas Gadjah Mada. Thank you, Professor Erna, for sharing it. If may I ask, after joining BRIN, will LAPAN have the authority to form a consortium of universities and agencies that provide education and training related to remote sensing to form a national level remote sensing core curriculum, such as at this link, which was developed by the University of Minnesota and its consortium? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. And now, as I mentioned before, that the mandate of the space law, that the space activities now become the mandate of the BRIN. And among the BRIN units, LAPAN is a research organization, and this research organization has the task to develop and to conduct the research activities, but not only limited to our organizations, but also open for any researchers, and also including from the universities. And we also would like to invite and open for the researcher from the private entities. This is a new scheme or a new business in the research activities. So by joining in under BRIN now, not only for the I think it's not the consortium is open, not only consortium as we have done before, not only consortium, but also open for the research activities. For example, in 2022, next year, LAPAN as the research organization would like to open the opportunities for the researchers under the BRIN, not only limited to research organization of aeronautics and space, but other research organizations under BRIN, as well as the universities and private entities, to propose any particular topics that can fit to the puzzle of the space research program. We will manage the space research program as a national research activities, and the facilities also will be open for research for researchers outside the BRIN, and the activities also will be open to universities and as well as the private entities. Of course, we for the private entities, we need a kind of what we call it an agreement that the research will be conducted to, for example, at least to produce the license of any particular model, for example, for geoinformation data processing, and then the license will be adopted by the private entities to produce any information that will be used for commercial activities. This is kind of a new area or new business in research activities in Indonesia, and this also including LAPAN itself. So and we would like we welcome the universities and other agencies not only to provide education, because we, of course, our researchers will have the capacity in, for example, in space technology and applications, and the universities, for example, has the education program. We can also fill the needs to provide education. Not only the education, but also in training, for example, and also how to co-develop any particular research activities. This is also will be open for the universities and other research agencies.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, question from Dr. Prima Widayani. She's from our department, and Dr. Prima Widayani is also teaching remote sensing and GIS for health at the Faculty of Medicine. So I think this question is very interesting according to what you have presented. Yeah, thank you, Professor Erna, for a very informative presentation. In the presentation, it was shown that LAPAN developed application research in the health sector, especially COVID-19. Are there other types of health application research developed by LAPAN? Please.
Yeah, I think so far, because it's for example, the hub COVID hub 19 is kind of new. The challenge when we are experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, and our researchers try to put efforts and attention how we can provide any information that we can use the satellite data, for example. And as for the health applications, I think, for example, not really direct health information, but for example, the information from the satellite imageries for the health impact, for example, health impact based on the, for example, we can also develop the new area in terms of natural disaster and its impact on health. Of course, we will not be able to do it by ourselves, but we need to collaborate with the Ministry of Health, with the other agencies related to the health sector. And the air pollution, for example, so this is another area of how we can also utilize the satellite imagery to correlate the air pollutions with the health impact. For example, the PM 2.5, for example, is kind of very critical to the health I mean, respiratory health impact. This is a kind of another challenge of how we can also use this kind of data for the health applications research.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think this answer is very useful. And I think time is up. So again, thank you very much, Professor Erna, for sharing your knowledge and experience in this meeting. Now, please allow me to move to the second speaker, is Dr. Geri Miller. I think she's already here. Good morning, Dr. Geri Miller.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for joining us. And before you make a presentation, please allow me to read your biodata. Yeah. So the topic of Dr. Geri Miller is Geospatial Education in the Cloud, digital transformation and today's workforce skills. And Dr. Geri Miller is Director of Education in Esri's Global Business Development Division. Her main role is to support academic institutions stay on cutting edge of geospatial technology. Prior to that, she was an instructor and technical lead at Esri, specializing in online and on-site delivery of various geospatial technology courses. Dr. Miller is also an associate program director for the Johns Hopkins University Master of Science in Geographic Information Systems program, and has been a lecturer in the program since its inception. She has developed and taught a range of the GIS curriculum, including Web GIS, Spatial Analytics, Programming in GIS courses. Dr. Miller has worked extensively with many universities to support and enhance the geospatial footprint on campus in the capacities of advisors, lecturer, and curriculum developer. So I think your presentation will be very interesting for us. And you have 45 minutes for presentation and another 15 minutes for discussion. So Dr. Miller, the time is yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for welcoming me. It's a pleasure for me to be here, to be speaking with all of you. I'm joining you today. So good morning to everyone. I'm joining you today from the east coast of the United States. For me, it's 10 o'clock in the evening, a little after that. But, you know, there are many negative things about the pandemic, but one of the, you know, little very few positives is that we can do these sort of discussions and engagements a little more easier. They're not ideal. I wish we could be in person, but anyway. So thank you again. It's a pleasure to be here and to be speaking with everyone. So thank you for the wonderful introduction as well. And yes, we're going to discuss a little bit how geospatial technology has changed, has transformed, and what that means for geospatial education. So as educators ourselves, what are some of the things that we need to think about in terms of preparing our students for today's workforce skills? And I'll kind of share a little bit of from a couple of different perspectives. As you mentioned in the introduction, I'm a sector director for the education team at Esri, and our primary role is to support academic institutions across the globe. And then also I still have an affiliation as an associate program director at Johns Hopkins University. So I still teach there, still do curriculum development, work with students and so on. So a little bit of a perspective sort of from both hats. And before we get started with the actual presentation, just a little bit more about me. I did grow up in Eastern Europe. I finished high school there. So I was born and raised in Bulgaria. I finished high school, moved to the United States as an international student. And for many years ago, and I stayed there. So I've been in a number of different universities. Undergraduate is in business administration, master's is in geography, and PhD work in the University of Delaware. And then I've taught in a number of different universities as an adjunct faculty, teaching anything GIS related. But those two are the primary obligations, working with Esri, supporting education globally, as well as working at Johns Hopkins to be the faculty. I'm an educator myself. So as educators, to me, it's very important to understand our primary mission. And, you know, there's obviously kind of a multiple facets of things. We do a lot as educators, as researchers, but, you know, one of our missions is to support our students, to ensure that they're well positioned for success, to ensure that they're ready as they enter the workforce, regardless of the domain or industry that they're going into, is that they are set up the business because they are the generation of tomorrow that's going to be working in the sustainable world in a sustainable manner. And we need to make sure that they're aware of all these wonderful geospatial skills. So we already know, if everyone that is gathered here in this group, we already are aware of why GIS. Most likely we've been using it, we've been doing it for quite some time in different capacities. But one of the fascinating things about this technology is that it's applicable to many, many different disciplines. It's obviously geography domains, geology, natural sciences, environmental sciences, urban planning. We can do conservation. We can apply it to medical sciences, and all of these different domains and these different disciplines. And it's important to recognize that it's out there. It can be used. I was discussing with Clemson University professor, and he's a physics professor, and he was teaching using geospatial technology in his physics classes. He's using story maps. So it's really fascinating to see these developments of how the technology has grown to serve all of these multiple disciplines and these multiple sectors. And so from our perspective, for one, as educators teaching our students, and also from students, I do know that there are some students in the audience. So what are some of the things that we kind of need to keep in mind, that what is driving us, right? So for one, be a change agent. And we know who Dr. Jane Goodall is and all the wonderful work that she did with chimpanzees in Africa. But through the means of geospatial technology, we can be that change agent for tomorrow. Also, something else that really is important for us as educators, as we're teaching, as we're developing our students, as well as for students themselves to be able to learn and understand this gaining these marketable skills as they enter that workforce. And at the end of the day, as students, the motivation is to get a job. So we want to graduate, we want to get a degree, and of course, we want to be employed using this technology. And there's lots of opportunities that are out there for those that do know geospatial. So I want to switch gears a little bit and discuss some of the industry trends that we have seen, that we have observed, that are important in today's world. And primarily, there's a digital transformation that has occurred in recent years that is unprecedented, that is unlike any other. And in that digital transformation, not just for GIS industry, just in general, there's digital transformation, but that also transformed how we do GIS and what we do with GIS. So it's important to recognize that. And as we have discussions, and myself, as we have discussions with either different universities as to some of the work that's taking place, or even some students that are graduating, or some industries that are out there, or potential employers. So we still see a lot of desktop-only GIS focus. So for example, ArcMap or QGIS, so primarily working on a desktop computer, kind of tied to that specific desktop technology. So I'm going to take us back a little bit in a time travel to 2004, a time tunnel, if you will, to 2004. So that's when Facebook was founded. This is how old our today's students, their typical undergraduate students, are. So they were this old back in 2004. Our phones looked like this, if we had phones at all, right? So this is long time ago. So these 17 years ago, and that's when, particularly speaking for Esri, that's when ArcMap was first released, long time ago. And the one thing that, it's important to convey is that, this, again, transformation has happened, the shift has happened. And we need to think about if we're still solely using, whether it's for research or for teaching, desktop technology, to kind of reconsider that and think what else is out there and what are some of these newer approaches and techniques that we can take, because it's way more than this anymore, at least what geospatial technology is. So industries, businesses, governments, universities either have moved or hopefully very soon will be moving to what we like to refer to as modern GIS or SaaS GIS. And in a sense, in the old era of how we used to do GIS kind of long time ago, right? We had something like this. We had very complex technology, so complex applications that we're working with, and I'll just pick on ArcMap. So very complex technology that was running on workstations, right? Not on laptops, not on mobile devices, just workstations. Importantly, we're tied to the office, we're tied to the lab, and that's where we had to do the work. And then also another kind of important consideration is that only GIS experts were kind of able to do this work. It took a lot of training, it took a lot of work to actually be able to do geospatial work. Well, that has changed dramatically since this digital transformation has taken place, and how it has changed in a number of different ways. And COVID, actually, the pandemic, accelerated some of this, exacerbated some of this, made it stronger, or made this shift, in a sense, propagated this shift. But we can do our work anywhere, and we saw that in the virtual world, in the digital world. We can do GIS on any device. It doesn't have to be on these complex machines, computers. It can be on mobile devices, it can be on laptops and Mac machines, and it could be on anything. Also, in terms of what geospatial technology is, They're no more just these complex applications that have hundreds of layers, super complex technology and like a learning curve. Now they're more so lightweight apps, particularly for the user's end, or for us that are building some of these apps. And then GIS is now for everyone. We saw that across multiple disciplines, across various ages, particularly even starting from K-12 going to higher education, but it's for everyone. Anyone can do GIS for one age, but as well as just different industries or different governments and different domains and so on. So GIS is for everyone, not just for the experts anymore. So it's also another important consideration of this digital transformation. So what GIS looks like today, it's sort of this. It's not one application. It's not the desktop application anymore. It's focused apps that are running on mobile devices, right? So whether we're doing tree inventory or out in the field collecting data, it's dashboards that we're using to share information with the world. It is other applications that we're using to collect data. We still have a lot of those analytical capabilities. So this picture of exploration analysis showing a model builder or modeling sort of an environment, that is still there. Some of these desktop applications are still there for more the complex workflows that we have with GIS, but the point of it is all of these different applications that serve a particular purpose in terms of how this technology has evolved. So we like to call it modern GIS. Might have seen the name WebGIS or CloudGIS or SaaSGIS. You can call it your favorite name, right? So it has all these different kind of names, variations of what geospatial technology looks like today. But the point of it is it's not desktop GIS only. Desktop GIS is still part of it, but it's not just that. It's way, way more than that. And kind of going back to this, even we think about it, we'll take a look at the dashboard a little bit more. It's a lot about sharing information with the community. Some of the portals that were mentioned earlier, the hubs that are being built, or this notion of sharing. If someone is using and working in a desktop application, producing some analysis outputs, well, they can now share them easily to the web, put them in the cloud. Others can use them. We can store imagery in the cloud. We do all of these different things that are sort of interconnected. And as we kind of think about some of these geospatial skills, it's important to ensure that our students are aware of them. So pretty much anything is cloud-based anymore, right? So some of the main functions of GIS, they haven't changed all that much. So we still do spatial analytics, we still do mapping and visualization, we still do data management, we share, we collaborate, but the tools of how we do it and technology has evolved. And of course, some of these, what you see in the upper part of the slide, the notebooks and big data imagery, these are sort of hot things and when it comes to geospatial tech anymore these days. And yes, it's harnessing some of this big data that's coming as, and we saw some of these examples that previous speakers have shared, being able to harness this data, manipulate it efficiently, and so on, and do analysis with it, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of other capabilities that are there, but a lot of them are anymore cloud-based or could be cloud-based. So why do these industry trends matter? So speaking more so from a programmatic perspective, and particularly when, as part of Johns Hopkins, we care a lot about these things, right? So what attracts students to some of our programs at the university? So dynamic curriculum is one of them. So they're looking for that dynamism. They're looking for that diversity. Cutting edge technology is another one. We hear it over and over and over again that they want to see this cutting edge technology. They want to see this innovation. And of course, employment opportunities, that's always a kind of a big consideration there. Diversity of faculty experiences, so that it's, obviously having that plethora, having that diversity of who is there on our staff. So all of these things, they do matter in terms of attracting these students and making our program successful. So thinking and tying some of this to today's workforce skills, there are a number of different considerations. So some questions here. So have the changes in GIS really had a dramatic impact on the skills required for today's workforce? So I'll read it again. Have the changes in GIS really had a dramatic impact on the skills that are required for today's workforce, right? So they have, right? Some quotes, examples from students. So this is Amanda Huber, just relatively recent GIS grad. And again, I'll read the quote there. Some of the technologies that I've had to learn through internships and GIS positions have been ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, the back end of GIS, things like servers and administrating them and working with databases, GIS databases and such. And because of this, starting my first GIS position was quite the learning curve. In a sense, it was hard. So the point of it being is that she went to university, she went through this degree, but it didn't really quite all that much prepare her. So she still had to learn lots of things on the job. So that's where we're seeing some of this gap, that students are sharing some of this information, and kind of we try to think through, well, what can we do to kind of change that? So as educational institutions, for us to be the leaders in that innovation that is taking place. So this is another interesting quote from Jason Jackson from Bass Pro Shops, just a private organization. Beauty of dashboarding tool is that they help people visualize something that can be complex. It paints a different operational picture than just reading spreadsheets and having the conversations. And again, some of these the recent innovations in geospatial technology, some of this notion of dashboards, or the idea of taking this data and making it visually appealing, visually easy to understand by people. So getting a hold of our data, making it understandable for others, it's an important concept that is, again, relevant across multiple domains and across multiple disciplines. So it's another important change. This one is from Henrik Hagnes, who's at Equinor, an energy company that specializes in energy efficiency. So not very long ago, if people wanted maps for their reports, they would have had to call the mapping department. And it's interesting how the GIS really has become ubiquitous technology for everyone, that anyone can use it. It's not just the specialized people that have been trained on it. It has enabled a lot of people to either build apps or create mapping products or visualize information, do analysis, and so on, particularly through the use of some of these relatively easy to use applications. So what are some of the skills that are required? When we think about geospatial technology and someone who does want to do GIS or use GIS in some capacity, again, whether for either research or they're going to be employed by industry and such. So what are some of these skills that are needed? One is application configuration, and we see this all the time where the students are able to build apps that are agile, that are mobile friendly, that are easy to use, that are simple, that are focused. And this also, kind of infers that we're not necessarily in this particular case like doing programming. So there's all of these different apps that are mobile apps, map apps for the web that serve a different purpose. The students are able to build them. Automation is another one. So automation skills like programming, whether it's Python, whether it's R, whether we're doing some sort of task that we're modeling it, but we're automating things. It's a very, very desired skill out there. Also, enterprise cloud, particularly for those that are going to be sort of hands-on GIS experts within various organizations. It's important that they're able to manage a GIS system, to at least understand what this GIS system is. Sometimes it runs in the cloud, sometimes it can run on premise, and it can be actually software installed on local computers or computers that are in the cloud. So being able to understand that is important. And of course, a little more the requirements gathering part, more so on the soft skills, as we like to call it, part of being able to look at a problem, understand the business, the technical requirements, or at a project, being able to understand those requirements, kind of translate them, being able to communicate with all the stakeholders, and then, of course, being able to apply geospatial tech to some of that. So these are important skills. And, when we think about the Johns Hopkins dashboard, we all have seen it. And it's how, when we think about from cholera, when Dr. John Snow started, really created first for public health epidemic mapping. He created the map and figured out where the disease was coming from the Broad Street pump in England. But things have changed quite dramatically, right, in terms of what we do from cholera to COVID, how we do it. But going back to these skills that I mentioned earlier, this dashboard, it's exactly what these skills actually are. When we think about it, it's an application that was built, that was easily configurable. It happens to be the Esri's operation dashboard, right? So the amazing thing is that graduate student build it, given the guidance of their professor, Dr. Lauren Gardner. So Dr. Lauren Gardner kind of had the vision, oh, it would be great to actually be able to map this as it just started happening. So a graduate student just took an application that's easily configurable, no programming, nothing at all. They just built it, right? So that was that first step. But then as everyone around the world started using this dashboard, it needed more, right? It needed the capacity to, or the capability to take data from various sources, do something to this data, and then be able to feed this data to the dashboard. So it actually took a lot of kind of programming and automation on the back end to be able to kind of put it all together. And also something that, you know, flip the slides, something also that we don't necessarily think about this dashboard is, again, because of the billions and billions of hits that it would take, right? It had to be scalable so that it's performant, so that, you know, so many people are using it, so it had to respond, right? And when we think about this third one, there are lots of things that were done to spin up additional servers in the cloud, to provide that backbone underneath, underlining infrastructure in the cloud, and so on and so on. So it's, again, and we don't necessarily think of it that way, but it's kind of the epitome of kind of some of these skills that are required to put something like this together. And then, of course, the requirements gathering. So Dr. Gardner and students started it, right? But then there's all these other teams that kind of had to get together, be involved to actually support it and be able to provide that authoritative information that was so transformational in terms of how we track the pandemic. We, that is everyone, like, you know, as species, we track this pandemic and we dealt with it. So anyway, all of these, the requirements gathering and so on, have been important. So what are some of these skills, right? When we think about skills of our students, what are some of the skills that are required? And a lot of it, you know, is sort of this cloud GIS. It's no more desktop. So we're seeing things like publishing layers, like sharing layers to the web, or building dashboards, or using story maps, or building portals. So earlier portals were referenced in the earlier presentation. It's doing Python or scripting or development, using ArcGIS Online, mobile data or field data workflows, building web applications, business requirements gathering. So again, these are the things that some of these employers are looking for these days, and it's important to kind of recognize if that's not what our curriculum is reflecting, that we ought to consider some of that. And also some of the other skills that are a little more kind of on the soft side, with students, right? So being curious, understanding how to use this data, and there's lots that go in there. Knowing some of these geotechnical foundations. Technology is great, but it's not just about technology. We need to understand what this technology is doing, how to properly use it, right? So some of these fundamental skills and the foundations, they're very, very important to understand what is actually taking place with this, you know, piece of technology that we're using. Being adaptable, being good communicator. I always tell my students it's the adaptable piece is so important because technology will change. Some of the workflows will change. We need to understand how to deal with some of these changes. And it's difficult. Like, the change is not an easy thing for anyone. But being open, being adaptable, it's an important skill to actually have. So with that, not to be the computer, kind of the old computer holding the door, right? But kind of to be that flexible, innovative mind, to be able to use some of this work. So in terms of growth for GIS and geospatial technology, so there's kind of two broad areas. One of them is GIS jobs that are open, so organizations looking for GIS professionals. And increasingly and more, it's GIS is these jobs across multiple organizations and industries and sectors, where GIS is just a tool in a tool belt. It's something that we use to do our job, to problem solve, to achieve results, to do our research, and so on and so on. It's not like we're not just GIS professionals, we're some other kinds of professionals, but we're leveraging these tools. And that's where a lot of the growth lies when we think about GIS and kind of how it has developed, and where its potential really truly lies across these different disciplines. Some of the profession's tasks, there's lots of them out there, whether we're doing management support or animal inventory management support, whether we're doing fire growth modeling, whether we're doing community assessments or soil analysis. And again, we saw diversity of examples and applications earlier. There's so many so many different directions and which one can go with leveraging this technology. Again, it's not about the technology itself. It's about helping us do our job, build a sustainable world, and be impactful in what we do. So GIS has transformed greatly. We saw that earlier. We kind of had that discussion. It's no longer this one desktop application. It's sort of this cloud thing that has morphed, that has all of these different capabilities. We can leverage cloud computing infrastructure, right, as we're using this geospatial technology, other business systems integration. So it's not, again, just a desktop technology, but we can integrate, whether if someone is using, say, either AutoCAD, or they're using something for more, administrative and operations side of things to run academic campuses, so we can integrate with some of these other technologies that are there. Real-time tracking, it's much easier to do this now, more advanced analytics, GeoAI, machine learning, of course, smart mapping, visualization, building apps. So lots of these different things of kind of how technology has shifted and how it has grown. And it's important to keep current in terms of, again, it's important. I say it's important, but it's one of the hardest things to do, right? We all do many things, and it's always so busy. It's hard to take a step back and to sort of reevaluate or find time to update, whether it's curriculum, find time to update resources. It's very difficult. So there are, however, resources that are out there that can help with some of that. That can be used sort of as a basis, especially at least for those of us that are in the teaching environment, or maybe we're doing research, we want to kind of get up to speed on something. There's lots of either e-learning, there are lessons that are available. There's lots of training opportunities that is available. So Esri provides a lot of those, and I know our wonderful colleagues on the education team at Esri Indonesia, I know they produce a lot of resources as well. Some of them are being localized in a local language, which again, it's not the easiest thing to do. But the point of it is that there are resources out there that are leveraged. Books, some people obviously still like using books in classrooms. So there's lots and lots of them that are out there that at least we can use as the basis for some of these, or implementing some of these newer technologies if we aren't there yet. The resources that are available, and it's not just that. We can't just teach based on these existing resources. More is needed to to ensure that students are thinking critically, that they're actually not just learning tools and buttons, but they're actually truly problem solving as they come across a problem or presented with a problem. They can leverage technology in an efficient way to be able to solve it. But the point of it is there are learning resources that are available to at least service the starting point, or at least serve the stepping stone to some of the curriculum updates that we may want to take. So bottom line is digital transformation. This happened. It will continue to happen. We embrace it. We go with it. We be flexible with it. We can't know it all anymore. And the acknowledgement of that is important. Sometimes students might be, or, it's always over time, it's been obvious as professors, teachers, we're the subject matter experts. We stand in front of a group of students and we teach them. Sometimes anymore, particularly when it comes to technology use, it's to me, it has been very, very interesting to observe how even working with students on a new piece of technology that even myself, I don't know all that well, but together exploring it, so almost sort of side by side, it has been transformational, and makes them part of this learning process, makes them part of the work that is taking place. So the point of it is being flexible and adaptive, being able to change things easily, embracing that digital transformation. It's a great thing. So bottom line, again, from students' perspective, what's important, inspiring them to be a change agent in the world. And then, of course, gain marketable skills. That's always going to be important, and get a job. Ultimately, that's what one of the greatest motivators for students is to graduate, to get out there and ensure that there is a job that exists. So with that, I'm going to stop the sharing here for a moment. And I don't know how we're doing on time. Looks like we actually have a good amount of time. So this was not full 45 minutes. Maybe that's okay. We can have some more time for questions or some more time for discussion. So at this point, I'll let the facilitator speak, but we can open up the the floor for questions either via a chat or feel free to raise your hand and unmute your mics and we can simply have a conversation. You're muted though.
Sorry,
there you go.
Muted. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Miller. I think we can do both. Audience can type on the Zoom chat or can ask directly. But please, if any question from the audience, yeah. While waiting a question from the audience, please allow me to ask you.
May I ask a small question to Dr. Miller?
Pak Dimyati, Dr. Dimyati, right? Okay, yeah, please.
Yeah.
You can ask directly to Dr. Miller. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Miller. Yeah. Actually, you have presented a very interesting and also informative presentation. And I saw one of your presentation. There is a small note mentioned about women and GIS. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, around 3 or 4 slides before the end of the slides. So I want to know what kind of research talking about women and GIS.
It's a great question, and thank you for asking it, Mr. Dimyati. It's so that particular. I'm going to share my screen one more time for that particular slide. There's a book that actually exists. There's a book out there that is called Women in GIS. And really the point of it is that it is promoting, I want to stop sharing here again, but it's a book that is promoting women doing and using ArcGIS, not necessarily just ArcGIS, but using geospatial technology and entering this technology field that is there. So it's a movement that we have tried for quite some time to kind of encourage young girls and women in general to be more empowered, to enter the workforce, and to do wonderful things with geospatial technology. So what that is, it's a book that describes some amazing women professionals that are working in this field. It's a fascinating book. So one of our colleagues at Yale, Miriam Olivares, she is their geospatial librarian, and she has done, she's born and raised in Mexico, migrated to the United States at some point. Very, very interesting lifespan in terms of how she became to use GIS technology, and now the wonderful impact that her work is having across the whole Yale University campus community. Like, she is there to serve it, provide that geospatial support across the whole campus, but she's done so many other different things. But the point of it is that to encourage others, particularly other women and young girls, to think about this technology.
Yeah, I want to continue with these questions. Recently, there are many women perform in many presentation media related to GIS. I want to hear from you the role of the women professional in the GIS development and application.
So I would have to ask you to repeat the last part of the question. So you would like to hear from me?
Yeah, I want to know from you the role of women professional in GIS development and application.
I see. Okay, so a couple of different things, and please do feel free to elaborate if this does not answer the question. So particularly, so I'll speak a little bit from Esri and just some general observations. We do see and welcome, we do see an increase and welcome a lot of geospatial application developers, that is on the development and product management teams at Esri. A lot of female representation, but also all around, it's not where we need to be, right? So particularly engaging with organizations, mainly in the US, a little bit globally as well. There's a lot more that we can be doing to encourage women in development roles that are actually developing technology and applications. We're seeing some growth, but there's lots more that can be improved. I don't know if that's the answer that you're looking for. If you're looking for a little bit more specifics, I don't know any numbers or statistics that would be any correct to cite at this point.
Yeah.
What I do know is it's happening, but we need more of it.
That's enough. I just want to know the growth and the trend of this. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Miller.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah. Dr. Miller, I have another question. I think you know Professor Torsten Hägerstrand from Sweden. Yeah? He studied population geography, and he explained the people movement in the space and in time. So I would like to know if you have any research or other research related to the spatial behavior of women.
Spatial behavior of women.
Yeah.
Okay, the movement over time. That's a very interesting question as well. I don't know. I personally have not done research in that specific area, but I do know there are a couple of universities that have done more so the human dynamic aspect of it and focusing in a little bit on women. Other than that, I don't know of any specific examples that are being done for women in that research. However, if anyone from the audience wishes to, has some ideas or has seen examples of it, please do raise your hand and share. That would be wonderful. And it's you're posing very interesting questions that it would be good to have some quantitative data to back some of them up and to know a little bit more of where we stand. I don't know if we really have those kinds of, I don't have those kinds of answers. I don't know if we generally have those kinds of answers.
Yeah, because about 10 or 20 years ago, I read that some people say that women could not think spatially as compared to men. Yeah. I don't believe it. At least I'm seeing you explaining spatial aspect of the technology. So I think it's not true. Yeah. But but I think it's very interesting to see how women behave spatially, as compared to men.
That's been interesting.
Very interesting. Okay, any other question, please? And while waiting questions from others, I have another simple question. When educate people in geography, usually we talk about the spatial aspect, but also the structure of geographical knowledge. But on the other hand, by using internet, even cloud computing, usually we learn things more modularly instead of more structurally. So is there any influence of the way they are learning in more structured way or in more modular way, especially in the learning spatial aspect? Based on your experience?
So based on my experience, I would say less of the structural learning, more of the modular sort of learning. To what we have observed, particularly with some of these newer spatial patterns, is that structure could be important, like something that is either scripted or more of a step-by-step, more of a framework, and you're kind of following this path. You know where you're going to start, you know you're going to end, and you kind of follow all these steps along the way. That is probably a little bit less of an effective method than more so modularly. It being, again, going back to that notion of flexibility, adaptability, and in a sense, kind of keeping an open mind of where we again kind of have a framework, right? But what is going to help us solve a problem all the way at the end, right? We may need to do adjustments in the middle, and the flexibility of some of these newer either tools or environments have provided a lot of opportunity for this sort of kind of modular learning, if you will, or much less of the structural sort of thing. So, and in another way to say it is, even as students are learning, I mean, sometimes it's right. So it's easy for them if we just have a scripted tutorial and they go click here, step here, do this, do that. But at the end of the day, that's not enough, and it's not. You know, it's just not. So there's a lot more that is needed.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there is no more question. Let me. There is a question from Dr. Sanjivana. Yeah. Dear Dr. Miller, thanks for the really interesting presentation. How do you see the GIS profession in the future with all the automation, artificial intelligence going on right now?
Yeah, it's transforming, really. It truly is transforming. The GIS profession, it's interesting. It will, for one, it's going to persist, right? So it is established to a level that it's going to be there, but some of this artificial intelligence or machine learning or some of this automation that is taking place, it has become an integral part of it. So as geospatial professionals, it's important that we understand what those either approaches or what that technology or those steps are, to be able to incorporate and be able to solve these sort of, we like to call them geo AI, right? So geo AI problems. It has becoming an integral part of today's GIS job. So it's not even just in the future, it is actually happening today. We need to know and be aware of some of these AI technologies. And another way to think about it is that some of the AI automation things that we have when we think about object detection or image object detection, right? We've been doing this for quite some time, like long time ago, right? But we haven't been doing it at the scale at which we're doing it, with the processing speed at which we're doing it, with the amount of automation without using the trained eye to do it. So using that machine, that artificial intelligence to be able to process it and do it real quick. We've not done that. So it's a concept, we've done it, but not in these AI approaches. But it's part of the GIS job now to actually know some of these methods and some of these workflows. So that has been a big transformation, and it will continue to be.
Okay, thank you. And there is another question from Ms. Chandra Sarijati Kartika. Dear Dr. Miller, thank you for your nice presentation. Currently, GIS software is widely developed for web applications. However, in certain countries or regions, internet availability is still very inadequate, where the license for GIS software is quite expensive. In this case, how can Esri or educators help to overcome this so that GIS education can be more widespread? Very interesting question.
Very indeed. Very interesting, very relevant, very applicable question. And we see it over and over. There's no easy answer for some of it, right? So internet availability, it's just not present. When that happens, hopefully we know when it will happen, so that we can use, there are applications that are out there that are not dependent on the internet. Then you can either run them on phones, mobile devices, so do GIS obviously through the phone in a disconnected sort of mode, or take the laptop in the field, if that is even a possibility, without it being on the internet, having still some sort of a desktop application, that's another possibility there. So there are options that are out there. But hopefully, it's a known issue of how to get around it without that internet connectivity. And all the cloud that I talked about earlier, obviously it's not going to be as applicable in those situations, right? This is all assuming there's internet, but there are applications that are not dependent or do not need that internet connectivity. So that's the first part of the question. I guess I'll kind of back it up with specific examples. So with ArcGIS Pro, you can go in completely disconnected from the internet, put it on a laptop, and then take it in the field. So that is a possibility, right? With Collector for ArcGIS, kind of likewise. So one does not need to constantly be connected. You can check data back in after or whenever that is internet connectivity. So that's the one part. But the other part of the question is, well, what if it's too expensive, right? It is too much. So I encourage you in this particular case, when it comes to Esri, do work with your local either. So I know that this Esri Indonesia provides great support to the community there. Do work with them. Do work with, of course, you can always reach out to us. There are ways that we can do, or we can provide that technology. So it's more of a matter of a conversation that needs to take place. So we definitely understand that there's a cost associated. So that's fully acknowledged. But particularly for education, it's not a commercial cost. It is far from it. It's not what government pays necessarily. It's not what commercial organizations pay. So we've always been cognizant of educators or education and educators.
Okay, thank you very much. There's another question from Dr. Nur Muhammad Farda. Will you ask directly, or we can read your questions? Pak Farda? Oh.
Okay, thank you, Pak Boyle. Okay, good morning, Dr. Miller. Thank you for the interesting and insightful presentation. I have two questions. First is, how to put engagement to student in cloud platform learning from your experience as educator side. The second is there any curriculum standard for spatial programming for undergraduate or postgraduate student? Is that any difference? Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Yes, thank you for Dr. Farda for the great questions. So first one, how to build engagement to students in the cloud platform learning. So a couple of different approaches, right? For one, when we talk about the cloud platform, a lot of it is about sharing. So I'll talk about, for example, a specific example. Say ArcGIS Online, or maybe they're doing something in ArcGIS Pro. They're working on a project. They're looking at data. They're either collecting data, evaluating data. So sharing that to the cloud. So sharing that as a feature layer, having other students interact with that layer, or provide feedback on an application that has been built, could be an approach in terms of how we engage with them. The one thing in terms of observation for working with students is that they love this sort of technology. They soak it up. It's easy for them to understand. They're always with this kind of web piece or internet piece in mind, and for them it's more engaging in a sense to be able to work in these sort of cloud and web environments. But if you're thinking of an actual engagement, so there's a way to ask them to interact with the layers, or to provide feedback to each other on the applications that have built, or collaboratively work on in one thing that we're seeing, for example, with story maps. I don't know if you have used story maps. It's one of the applications, but they can all create the application together. A group of 3 or 4 students can actually work and edit the application itself to build it up, to kind of work on that project collaboratively. And I saw in a previous presentation, someone mentioned the University of Minnesota. It was a remote sensing initiative there that was mentioned, but that same university has a wonderful story maps portal that does exactly that. So story maps at University of Minnesota, if you Google it, or maybe toward the end, I'll put some links in the chat, but that they do exactly that. They get students together to collaborate in this kind of a cloud and web-based environment. So those are some examples of that kind of student engagement in these particular cloud environments. And your next question, is there any curriculum standard for spatial programming for undergraduate and postgraduate students? So as far as standards are concerned, that could vary greatly. I wouldn't say there's one standard that we all follow. For one, it differs by country, right? So there are things that are in the US. In the US, for example, there's no such thing as an actual standard, right? That could vary. There could be more country-specific things in other countries. So typically, no. However, there are lots of resources, and again, pending time, perhaps I could put some information in the chat that provide either different how to get started with sort of programming, or the skills and the concepts that are needed to sort of build that automation and programming framework, how to start coding with geospatial applications and so on. And I see Regina put some links in the on the story maps example that I mentioned earlier, but that is a phenomenal. So the back to the story maps, not to the programming. That is a phenomenal example where we know other universities have sort of taken the work Minnesota did to teach with these story maps, right? We know many universities actually have done it so that they're not recreating the wheel sort of thing. So I encourage you to kind of think about it and employ some of these applications, and to get that collaboration among the students. And then, yeah, so in terms of programming, there are programming resources that are out there to help us with some of these coding concepts. As to standards, I don't necessarily think that there are such. Of course, there's always Python. It's a must. It's a geospatial language. Of course, there's R that is more and more kind of specifically when it comes to statistical computation and integration with geospatial tech. It's another important language for them to be able to leverage and utilize. And of course, there's the web programming side of things, the APIs that were mentioned earlier. So that's sort of kind of another aspect and another part of it that is important, yet very, very different. So those are the couple of things that I would keep in mind in terms of programming. If one has to pick one, I would stick to Python as an automation tool. Of course, web application development is important also, depending on what the goals are.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Miller.
Thank you.
But I must apologize because I think the time is up. So thanks again, because your presentation have enlightened us. Please allow me to move to the next speaker. Yeah, and the next speaker is Dr. Muhammad Dimyati. Good morning, Dr. Dimyati.
Yeah, morning, Pak.
Please allow me to read your biography. Yeah. So the topic will be presented by Dr. Muhammad Dimyati is the fusion of big data spatial ecological consideration as policy-based and national interest. Dr. Muhammad Dimyati is the former Director General at the Ministry of Research, Technology and Higher Education, leading the Directorate General of Strengthening for Research and Development since June 2015. He was previously the Deputy for Science and Technology Resources at the same ministry from 2014 to 2015. Prior to joining the current office, he served the Ministry of Public Housing from 2001 to 2014, with the latest position as Deputy Director for Organization and Budget Planning. Before that, he built his career at the Ministry of Public Works from 2001 to 2010. He obtained his bachelor degree in 1982 from Faculty of Geography, Gadjah Mada University, specializing in remote sensing. And then he obtained his master's degree in agriculture in 1990 and doctoral degree in agriculture in 1997 from Kyoto University. He has been heading research policy reform and leading interministerial deliberation to alleviate barriers in research policy in order to enlarging research outputs and productivity. He is now currently appointed as the head of Indonesian Geography Association. Now, Dr. Dimyati, the time is yours, and you have 45 minutes to talk and 15 minutes for discussion. Please.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Proyo. Good morning. And once more, thank you very much for introducing me very long. And this morning, I try to share my knowledge about the fusion of ecology and spatial big data as the basis for national policy formulation. Actually, I deliberately took this theme to remind us again and again that what science does is not for science, but according to me, for the good of the earth and its creatures. For this reason, implementing the research finding is a very important principle. And as we know all that implementing research results requires very great efforts. And understanding the policies for implementing research results is one of the keys to the success of streaming of the research result. The other reason why I took this title is that it is driven by the declining quality of our living environment, which is caused by the lack of harmonious relationship between human and their environment. The relationship between the human and their environment is studied in ecology, while all of us here master the management of spatial big data. Thus, it is hoped that this discussion or this introduction for our next discussion will be part of encouraging our awareness in improving the quality of the environment using spatial big data approach. First, I want to make a same perception about what spatial big data is. We can understand that spatial big data is location data that has very high 5V and 3C characters, namely very high volume, velocity, variety, variability, veracity, cost, consistency, and complexity. And spatial approach make easy, efficient, and accurate analysis result as a basis of policy formulation. But they need the right space in the Earth surface. The use of spatial big data approach is in line with the spirit of implementation of what we call with one map policy, as mentioned by Prof. Aris Marfai at the first day of this symposium. When we talk about the spatial big data, we can start with the problem identification, of course. What is the real problem of the spatial big data, or in this case, I want to call the geospatial information in the real field of implementation, especially in Indonesia? At least there are 5 problems, of course. The first, that map of the same thing are usually published by more than one agency without the coordination. That's what we see many places in this country. And some maps are not issued by the competent authority. Yeah, most of the maps, it's like that. And the third, I identified that the result of geospatial data analysis is varies. And also overlapping of materials for location for the permission program or formate programs. And also spatial based maps are still rare for making maps. This condition, I think, will cause the quality of decision making is not so good, and the level of achievement of national development will be decreased. And if we talk about environment, we know that there is 5 biggest environment problem in the world, as we know. The first one, we know that about 10% of deaths is related to air pollution induced impact. And second, every year, around 7.3 million tropical forests are brutally cleared for various purposes. And the third year, we can see that flora and fauna are destroyed due to, I can say, greedy of human activities. They sell for the purpose of pleasure and satisfaction. And also, UN organization reported that about 12 million lands are degraded to desert due to erosion. And in a century, the world population grows very fast from 1.6 to 7.5 million people. It means we will have problem if we are not so concerned with this kind of phenomenon. The level of waste pollution in Indonesia, an example, is also quite high. for the province with the highest level of pollution from factories, yeah, we can see here West Java, and the highest level of household with pollution in Central Java, and another level of pollution is in West Kalimantan. Besides the development that is not in accordance with the carrying capacity and capacity of the environment will tend to cause a disaster, such as flood, landslide, soil pollution, air pollution, and so on and so on. And if we talk about deforestation, we can see here that the rate of deforestation in this country, Indonesia, is so big, so huge. As an example, in the period of 1 year in 2012 to 2013 example, yeah, few years ago, there were more than 700,000 hectares were cleared. And as we know that around 41% of production forest was cut down, and around 12% of protected forests were damaged. Yeah, this is very negative impact, I think, and we have to underline that. And from these figures, we can underline that forest degradation result in the loss of more than 18.7 million hectares of forest per year. It means there are around 27 football fields per minute were destroyed. Even though the forest cover around 31% of land in the world, and 80% of land species depend on the forest for their lives. So this condition is very worrying. So that's why we have to concern about these things. And as a result, many flora and fauna, and also microba, and also insects, as a part of our natural wealth, are threatened with extinction due to this environmental damage. And even we are the third highest country in the world in the context of endangered flora and fauna. This is really scary for those who really understand of the impact of this condition. And if we look at our disaster trend, is also increasingly. This condition making us have to be really careful or vigilant. Disaster in this country, in Indonesia, occurs in many types. Those are landslides, earthquakes, flood, tornadoes, forest fire, volcanic eruption, drought, and so on and so on. And the number of this disaster increased from around 1,732 in 2015 to more than 2,300 in 2017. The impact of the disaster is also widespread. For example, house damages around almost 73,000 houses, and damaged facilities more than 2,000 in that year. So even more worrying, in just 1 year from February 2020 to February 2021, an example, the number of disaster is very high enough. It is more than 360 events with victims more than 60, settlement damage more than 10,000, and affected victim more than 1.7 million. Even in national statistic data mentioned that the average of loss due to the disaster is around more than 22.8 trillion per year. And if we say the average per year, 1.180 people die. This is the real disaster, we have to concern. And Indonesia is the fourth largest country by population in the world, as we know all. And the world population is projected to reach, as mentioned before, more than 8.5 billion in 2030, and to increase further to 9.6 or 7 billion in 2050, or 11 point something billion by 2100. This condition will affect the availability of food, water, housing, and other basic needs of the world, which are decreasing in magnitude. This condition is one of the things that makes the world even more decrease. These problems we need to look at, analyze, and find the best solution. One of them is by starting to look at what is the main cause, whether the physical condition of the environment, or the people, or the regulatory instruments, or what else. Let's take a look at the following three terms: environment, ecosystem, and ecology. All those three terms have something in common. I think all of us know that, namely, all of them are influence each other and are related to their environment. Our focus this time will be to see the interaction between organisms, including human, and also with their environment, biotic and abiotic, in a geographical area or in space, as well as how to use them in suitable manner with the consequences. We analyze with a spatial approach. For that reason, I choose the term ecology, because ecology studies the interaction between living things and their physical environment, while the environment only studies the interaction between living things. This is chosen because we will use the variables of living things, especially human and the inhabitants of the earth. In encouraging the concept of fusion of ecological and spatial big data considerations, I propose that this is necessary to pay close attention to this aspect of human resources, regulations, institutions, budget, and also relevance and productivity of the human resources. All of those items will be influenced by their mindset. So mindset is the key important. Therefore, to change the behavior, to enhance the prosperity of community, the improvement of national peace policy should be related with the environment ecosystem. In my opinion, a tool is needed to measure the successful implementation of 4 or 5 previous components I mentioned. That is human resources, regulation, institution, program, and budget, and also relevance and productivity of human resources. Measuring tools are needed that take advantage of the dynamic of Industrial Revolution 4.0 and the existence of the rise of millennial generations. According to the scientists in public policy, Dr. Tripranaji, a public policy analyst, that the development have given dangerous signs, namely the occurrence of several destruction or destruction of natural resources and the environment, and also the impoverishment of agrarian communities in the rural area and communities. It has happened because, according to him, there are three reasons. The first one is uncontrolled values of greed that accompany economic development activities with capitalistic character. The second one, the inability of knowledgeable people to convince the state administrators to build a smart civil society. And the third one is the relatively large group of poor people whose lives are highly dependent on natural resources. And from many references, we know that President Joko Widodo stated that data is our nation's new kind of wealth. And now data is more valuable than oil. And the number of public figures such as Bill Gates, Catherine Clifton, and so on have descended the mountain. Mereka turun gunung. And it can be read that spatial big data is something beautiful and interesting to use properly in building the civilization of a nation. So this is the my interpretation from the world public figure activities. And if we look closely in Indonesian example, various laws are available, both related to air pollution and also land erosion and all factors mentioned here. Not only regulation in the form of ministerial regulations, even law and also government regulation. What does it mean? That from the point of view of regulation, we have enough regulation. But the question is how to implement this very good regulation. In accelerating and promoting the fusion of ecological and spatial big data approach, who is the most responsible institution? In my opinion, it is an institution that has responsibility in this field. And let's say, of course, institution, I don't want to mention the name of institution, but there are one or two or three institutions responsible to implement a very good regulation. And meanwhile, the university and also research institute participate in encouraging the creation of human resources to meet the operational needs of spatial big data. And professional organizations such as Indonesian Geographical Association has to ensure their human resources are professional, expert, and skilled in carrying out their duties. And the government, in directing research, has started with an approach that puts forward coordinated data approach, one map policy approach, and a spatial big data approach, such as starting the implementation of research in national research priority, or we call it bahasa PRN, with the development of one of them, we say a platypus instrument that can be used to accelerate the implementation of one map policy. And this is coordinated by LAPAN. And such effort needs to be welcome with our participation. The geographic community and the PN program, I think we have to involve more and more. And for that, we have to put people at their best. Do not do activities that are only project oriented, because if we view environmental management as a project activity, just wait for the acute environmental damage to occur. And here I want to mention that SDGs should be referred as a guideline to achieve prosperity. The main principle, no one is left behind, should be implemented seriously in managing the policy formulation. Based on the above explanation of problems, good environmental and ecological management is the only solutions if we want to maintain the sustainability of our environment. For that, the use of spatial approach for environmental or ecological management is the best solution, because this will ensuring the efficiency, effectiveness, and also communicativeness for various sectors such as agriculture, housing, disaster, transportation, etc., etc. Why does the millennial generation need to be more intensely involved in enforcing the environment with a spatial big data approach? Because they are not clueless. It is proven that in Indonesia, an example, which is fact, has more cell phones than the total of population. It is dominated by social media in the form of YouTube and WhatsApp, Facebook, and also Instagram. And that's a toy of millennial generation. Why we have to involve them in this approach? And once again, we have to change the mindset, improve the concept of how formulate policies, and also improve the development policies. And we must continuously encourage the occurrence or implementation of policies that prioritize environmental or ecological sustainability as the main consideration. And for that, it can be accelerated by applying a spatial big data approach. And if that happens, it means that the role of geography or geographic community in the development will be even more significant. And based on that explanation, I want to conclude my presentation that it is a time for the development of this country, which is very large. It is time to manage it using spatial big data governance, which take advance of the very dynamic development of IT and AI as discussed before. The second, the realization of spatial big data management must begin with an awareness to change the mindset to reduce eco-sectoral, which is supported by very strong and sustainable regulations. And the third, it has been proven that the use of big spatial data provide great benefits such as efficiency, effectiveness, and so on for economic development. The fourth, the energy and collaboration of ministry or agencies, university, and also professionals, as well as related party, need to be continuously developed in order to realize the acceleration of the implementation of spatial big data for national development. And the last one, the one map policy can be used as a backbone to accelerate the realization of the implementation of spatial big data for national development in Indonesia. So this is all of my presentation, Pak Proyo. Only 28 minutes, and I return to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Dimyati, for very nice presentation. And while waiting for questions from the audience, I would like to know some information from you. I think it is very important to mention that the one map policy is the backbone of the big spatial data for national development in Indonesia. But usually people think that when we talk about the one map policy, we think about the same reference geometrically. And if the geometric aspect already satisfied, all things already done. But I also think about the harmonization or synchronization between the data, because we have a lot of data produced by a lot of ministries and other agencies in Indonesia. Do you think that they are at the same level of quality, or are they can they be easily integrated in the sense that they are really compatible to each other, according to your opinion? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Proyo. Yes, I agree with your opinion that geometric aspect is one of the important things should be set up earlier. And based on this correct map, we can use as the basis for developing many thematic maps. Without that mechanism, we'll have difficulties in harmonizing the thematic map as we feel till now. And as mentioned by Prof. Aris Marfai earlier in the first day of the symposium, also underlined that there are many thematic maps which actually should be in one coordination, but in the fact, these thematic maps produced or launched by the institution which not so have high quality. And as I mentioned before, the result of this situation would make low quality of our policy formulation in advance. So this is my opinion related to that. And based on my experience, it's not so easy to harmonize what we say thematic maps, yeah, because each institution have their own yeah, I can say hidden agenda for developing that map. So it needs yeah, many strategy and many instruments to make the real harmonized map in the near future. That one, Pak Proyo.
Okay, thank you. And because you are now the chairman of this Indonesian Geographers Association, so I think problem in the thematic maps is the problem of the geographers as well. So what do you think about the role of geographers to solve this problem?
Yeah, I think as mentioned by new government regulation number 45 2021, the role of geographer become better and better because the state recognized that this association as one of the party who should participate in the improving the quality of geospatial maps. So this association and their communities, I mean, not only Indonesian Geographical Association, but also for PIMGEO, MKMP, and other communities should make a good relation to work together to improve, especially to ensure that their member have a very high quality to do the map relations, yeah, by many activities. An example, by how to say, giving certificate of them by many short training or certification related many professional in spatial data and so on and so on. So this is the way to how to say, to enhance the role of association, including Indonesian Geographical Association.
Okay, so I think your answer is very relevant to the ones already explained by Professor Erna from Lapan and also by Dr. Miller from Esri, that we should increase our capability to educate people, to educate geographers in such a way, and make connection with the geospatial industry as well, so that the level of knowledge and skill of all geographers in Indonesia can be better in order to solve the problems related to the thematic maps in Indonesia. Is that right?
Yes, I think so. And not only that, we have to work together, not only under the spatial database community, but also with the others, because work together will make many efficiencies and effectiveness to achieve the goals. I mean, spatial data quality.
Okay, thank you very much with this very clear explanation. Now, is there any question from the audience? No questions? If there is no more question, I think we can close this session. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Dimyati. Also, thank you very much, Professor Erna and Dr. Miller for enlightening presentations. I hope your presentations can increase our knowledge in geospatial information as well. We will move to the next session, and I see that Dr. Chris Rosma from the University of Indonesia is already here, but you will be guided by Ms. Sari and also Dr. Muhammad Kamal and also Mr. Iqnal Haq as well. But before move to the next session, please allow me to close this session. Again, thank you very much for your presentation, and good morning.